Thank you so much for coming today. And thank you for giving me the opportunity here at the Institute for the Preservation of Cultural Heritage to have the opportunity to give to a new audience the keynote address that I delivered on the 15th of February at the College Art Association in New York City. And I'm grateful to the College Art Association as well for giving me this opportunity, because my thoughts about art history and its impact are in a different place from where they were. So let me ask you to imagine, if you will, that you were inventing the humanities today. Where would you start? Would you start with a poet singing songs of heroes and gods, of ancient battles and faithful wives? Would you start with a philosopher, or maybe two, who guided his acolytes at the market to discuss how one made an argument regarding ethics or politics? If you would, in fact, want to share your case with those far beyond the Athenian marketplace, then you need a mechanism. And that mechanism, a writing system that replicates speech, would allow you to share those ideas far beyond the small community from the same class and country with whom you framed them. Such systems are remarkable technology, allowing speech to be transmitted without the requirement of one-to-one human communication. What a miracle it is that words thought, argued, sung could be conveyed by simple scratches across hundreds or thousands of years. But would you start there today? This, of course, is where the humanities start in our students' education. Some might say with Homer, but almost certainly earlier in Babylon, and the word sung and shared, and then to be the subject of discussion and thought far beyond the ken of those who first imagined them. Of course, what you're looking at here is not a song, but rather a clear indication that the Pythagorean theorem was invented a long time before Pythagoras. But the transmission was hard, dependent on elite materials of scrolls and ink and dry places to preserve them, even as the copies and translations multiplied through time, breaking into visual form that tells us many things about time and human imagination, along with representation. Paleolithic caves of 30,000 years ago speak to us of action, of the verb made capable of capturing the unfolding of time and space simultaneously. But these messages were sealed away and lost until the 20th century. Humans also found ways to make other sorts of transmissions, capturing music and the forms that our eyes see. For the latter, one of the remarkable advances comes when the eye can be trusted with how it managed information, and when the hand could replicate what the eye saw rather than what the brain knew, a hand-eye problem that waxed and waned around the world and across time. Word and image may all have been on some equal footing until the early modern, when the text became king. With the advent of the printing press, the word was triumphant over the image and music. Religious transmission was easier to standardize and to share. I will just very quickly skate across the transformations that such dissemination helped make possible, from the Reformation to the Enlightenment to independence movements across Latin America. And then there was the related discovery in the West, for the Chinese had found it long before that, in mid-19th century America and Europe, of how to make cheap paper. Suddenly, inexpensive words could be everywhere. If the text had been king, it was now emperor. Hamlet's Act 4 could be read by anyone, any pagination, the same Act 4, the same Claudius and Gertrude. An individual denied an elite education, but with access to a Carnegie Library in the United States, could find her way to the same words that the most elite person in the world had at his fingertips. Was this dissemination criticized? Well, certain texts were expurgated. Here we have the Bowdlers. to address the danger of the word. But the sources for interpreting the past, whether Bernal Diaz's description of the true conquest or the Suetonius 12 Caesars, could now be consulted to develop a historical past as translations also flourished at the beginning of the 20th century. There were multiple sources, all widely available. In the United States, nothing developed literacy like the McGuffey readers. Studies of literature and history flourished, and they became cornerstones of American liberal arts, fundamental to a general education. The story of America's history was inculcated through the development of textbooks that emphasized a single narrative, generally told around the same great men and played against the gazetteer. Beyond these maps, illustrations were by and large reserved for zoology and botany books. As text-based and textbook knowledge flourished, studies of music and art continued to require specialized and expensive access. What did it take to launch the field of art history? It took much more than the text. At its birth in the late 19th century, it was the most elite of humanistic inquiry, requiring access to works of art themselves and a library in which to consult earlier references. Even the roadmap to the locations of works of art had not yet been written. From the religious establishment to the elite palace, whether in Japan or Sweden, the market made some works more available while others quietly disappeared into new hands and out of view, sometimes less accessible, sometimes more. Collections were formed at some universities in Europe, most notably the Fitzwilliam of Cambridge, for example, and the Yale University Art Gallery had stacks of paintings for students to study because of the acquisition of Colonel John Trumbull's pictures, the painter of the Revolution, as we call him, to found a college museum. The Yale Museum would grow to have deep collections of what we now call the early modern by mid-century, particularly at private institutions, but sometimes at public. And here I think of Indiana or Texas as having great public university museums. Colleges and universities came to view works of art as bearers of unique cultural knowledge, and so worthy of collection and preservation. Art could tell a story that might not be characteristic of the text, whether in the richness of painted fabrics or the glance that deflected attention away from a principal subject. Art's power would be reflected in prints and emulations, its ability through drawings and workshops and choice of material to offer a window on both a practice and a maker in a given place and find could be recognized. And so collections grew. What is now clear is that the unique charismatic object, particularly deployed for historical inquiry or interrogated for meanings that may well contradict a text, can open windows into understandings of the past, helping reveal more than the text-based narrative. The process of textual compilation transpires along a different axis in the world of art, where the practice of copying in one generation is more likely to lead to innovation in the next. There was probably a time, and for some institutions, that time might still be now, that the replicated image was feared. Would photographs or prints diminish the original? If there were, if there were a black and white print or photo available, would it discourage the study of the original? We laugh now because the replica is such a pale relative of the original. But what about the high-quality digital image, or the three-dimensional version that can be printed for you to have and to hold? The digital handheld camera and even the selfie have unleashed an unprecedented wave of distribution of the museum object. But these too engage questions of the original, bringing the eye closer to the daub of paint in some cases than could ever take place in reality, but which draw the viewer back time and again, toggling between the image captured and the work itself. And here I just want to congratulate my colleagues who have just received a prize from the College Art Association for their catalog, Red, entirely based on the ability to document cochineal in the pigments of every single work, whether it was textile or painted material of some sort in their exhibition. Well, those black and white photographs of the past were expensive to produce. Now it is faster to upload a picture and disseminate it than it is to type in a text. Nothing could be more different from the circumstances of the reproduced art image at its birth. From the 19th century engraving and 19th century photograph, the nature of visual imagery marched along slowly in increments that charted steady progress. Color would replace black and white. Still a very live practice known to some in this room, but perhaps not to ever be practiced by others. The study of the world's art principally took place by students commandeering a very large table, opening heavy and oversized books that might well not ever circulate, and beginning the study of the object, often with unillustrated catalogue raisonné, juxtaposed with museum exhibition volumes and auction catalogues. Ambivalence was there from the beginning. The image of the work could not be adequately captured by other media, yet there was little other means for the study of works of art. The boxes of university prints were absolutely transformative. They were ideal for the mental collecting of images, a visual data set in which all objects were leveled into black and white images at a single scale. For all their flaws and drawbacks, the university prints managed to stay in business through the 1980s. But what had been a stable experience of the primary image for well over 100 years has been disrupted. The image is where billions of individuals start their queries to search engines. It's how we communicate with one another and why Snapchat threatens Facebook. Images trump text, and the moving image, along with the three-dimensional one, will continue to perform changes on how we see and think that have not yet even been conceived. It is the text that is marginalized in this scenario as the images come to the fore. But now that the images are at the center, how might art historians capitalize on this phenomenon? Certainly museums are our allies, disseminating the high-quality images of their works. It's a constant challenge to upgrade the images we use, especially in our PowerPoints, just by virtue of the phone shots that we are grabbing. We have no business circulating the pink slides that still retain the fingerprints of our forebears. Look closely on your left. ArtStore does its best, but it's now part of JSTOR, a very different kind of business. And our images have to move so that our students can experience them, not just see them in class. We have to unleash the machines to sick the multiple tools of digital humanities on the images. Use machine learning, for example, to search the Meserve Kunthart collection of the Beinecke Library at Yale. For example, boxers, women with shiny buttons. We learn things, our students learn even more. This is the era of the democratization of the image. But how do we get the attention of our students? We know that one of the big, gorgeous truths is that the humanities are laden with the ambiguities of interpretation that call for creativity, which in turn nurtures resilience and insights that will spawn new ideas in the future and that will break down boundaries and open minds. We know that freshmen can learn to look and in turn see what we have not. But I know where the best and brightest are being pushed and encouraged and called. Smart high school students believe that the road to the future is paved with STEM. Heck, I get it. Especially if you are in an under-resourced school, that's where many of the opportunities to scale up for higher education lie. Many of our colleagues across the humanities have adapted and adopted the concept of STEAM, in which it is the addition of art that turns STEM to STEAM, from a foundational trunk to the energy that carries us upward. But in this arena, art history and the study of visual culture have an advantage, and we should take it. It's as if Aristotle had reached out himself and said, "Art, let me introduce you to my old friend science." Well, okay, he was thinking about astronomy, the science possible for a culture that did not have zero. It's as if the impassioned plea of C.P. Snow in his famous essay of 1959 on the two cultures of science and literature and the need for a bridge between the two could at last see the sciences and humanities joining one another. Snow was dismayed by the indifference of humanists to the discoveries that were launching revolution after revolution in the sciences. But if this was once true, it is not now. Art historians are not indifferent to science. This bridge is possible because something new has arrived for the study of art, in which techniques and processes new to art history reveal a new history, one which only science and technology can discover. Make no mistake, the technical history of art has always played a role in our discipline. Of course, this is what specialists who determine states of prints and analyze paper do in work that has often played and continues to play a role, and especially a role in the market. It's come to analog photography, now a closed set, and with repercussions as to how we see and understand the material world. It's a specialized skill set to know what you're looking for and to make sense of the outcome. Increasingly, that sense is being bolstered by new techniques that change our understanding of artistic practice. We can now know, for example, that Jan van Eyck was carefully harvesting panels from a single oak tree. Scientists can also look right through the layers of paint in the Ghent altarpiece to see where the 15th century work ended and where the 16th century repaint begins. We can see inside and through a Maya vessel, long admired for the perfection of shape, color, and application of design, to discover that the potting was also a tour de force, a coiled effort that achieves the uniformity of the wheel in a hand-built form, and that the rattles within were just as meticulously executed and reveal the hands of potters linked to painters across the Maya world. Science turns out to be the best friend that art could ever hope to have. When science and technology meet art, we find ourselves at start. We are partners, not afterthoughts. On the one hand, it's the bread and butter work of scientists, and some of it without novelty of technique, particularly for the scientists, let's be honest. But these applications are thrilling. The analyses are challenging, notwithstanding. And the excitement? Imagine being the freshman with technical training who works with a graduate student art historian, together revealing a hidden photograph, as took place in January for a team from Yale and Princeton. Will you be drawn to further discovery? Imagine being the undergraduate who finds that her quantitative work has her building histograms of the deployment of blue in 20th century Spanish painting? Will you be pulled into the materiality itself and into collaborations? And for art historians, mastery of both the analysis of technical studies and the ability to execute them yourself may come to be as important as knowledge of a language was just a few years ago. This new set of tools opens new possibilities in publication. Art historians have lived and died by the solo authored publication. But if scientists are committing time and laboratory resources, we will need to share credit, acknowledging the richness of collaborations. A thank you in the footnotes will not be sufficient. Like many of you, I've watched enrollments dwindle, and I've suffered every time some public figure takes a swipe at art history as a discipline. But I believe we now find ourselves in a position of extraordinary opportunity. This is the time for start, and starting now. Thank you.